Hello and welcome to the first episode of season two of the Up the Coast podcast. As always, I'm your host, Tyler. Two absolutely awesome guests for you today. In the second half of the show, going to be joined by Wake Forest's new guard, Nate Calmese. But here in the beginning, great guest. We've had him on multiple times. A wonderful friend of the show, Tate Frazier from One Shining Podcast. Tate, thank you for joining me.
Of course, man. Happy to be here. Happy to talk about college basketball. Best time of the year where everybody has hope. Everybody's excited about what can be and what will be. We get the prognostications that are usually incorrect. So that's always fun, too. And, every team has hope. And hope is a dangerous thing because it can lead you to March and it can lead you to a great run. And can lead to the fortunes of certain coaches moving in the right direction and sometimes in the opposite direction. So there's a lot of ACC storylines, a lot of new faces, a lot of old faces in new places. So I'm excited to talk about it all, man.
Yeah, and the prognostications, they are often wrong. And any fool can just sit down and rank 18 teams. Anybody can slap together something that looks decent. So we're not going to do that. We're not going to make predictions today. We're going to talk about the questions that are going to dictate the season because who knows how good Caden Boozer could be. We can take our
Hmm.
guesses at that. It's more important to talk about the fact that he's going to be an important X factor. But Tate, you are the guest, so I will let you go first here. Your number one most intriguing question in the ACC for 2025-26.
Will Wade actually be the man that he promises to be? I think that is my biggest question this season. I do respect everything that Will Wade has been able to put together. What he did at McNeese State was a fascinating phenomenon, and I do think him going to a program like NC State, we all watched them make that Final Four run with DJ Burns. It was a great time, but it did feel like a fleeting experience, a Kevin Keats experience that got him some extra time, some borrowed time. If you talk to some Wolfpack fans in my life, that's what they would call it. But again, he goes to a place that has history, that has pedigree, that obviously is a place in the triangle that is going to try to contend and compete with the North Carolinas, the Dukes of the world. And I do find the fact that we have this type of character in the ACC fascinating because Will Wade is not afraid to say what he thinks. He's not afraid to poke the bear. He's not afraid to point out that, hey, why can't NC State be a major player in college basketball again? And so for me, just the fascination of like, what does year one look like for Will Wade? And is it a year one or is it a year zero, right? Is this just we're trying to get off the ramp and get things rolling? Or is it we come out the gate hot? Obviously, a lot of talent on this team. So for me, it's all about the Wolfpack. And I'm excited to see what Will Wade looks like in year one.
Yeah, my bonus question that I have written down specifically for you is Will Wade going to be the most valuable character in the ACC this year? Because it was a bad year last season. I mean, who was the best one? Ian Shefflin, maybe like the collective Knipple family. In addition to the basketball not
Cooper
being
Flag's
as
mom,
good,
maybe. Yeah.
yeah, it was like the Duke players' families. Just
Hmm.
not that many entertaining people around the ACC last season.
Yeah, it's tough. And then this year you get Amir Khan, who obviously became, famous during March Madness, walking out with the stereo around his neck. I'm sure NC State will play into that a little bit. And then, the Trey Holloman of it all, right? A guy who was at Michigan State last year that a lot of Sparty fans thought there's no way this guy would leave Michigan State, but he ends up going to NC State. Darian Williams, right? A star for Texas Tech last year. Most people suspect that he would be in the NBA or the NBA G League at this point, but instead he's going to be playing for NC State. And again, Will Wade has talent, and when Will Wade has talent, that's a scary proposition for a lot of people. But again, he's going to be playing in a conference that also has a lot of talent. So I just wanted to kind of see on the scale of impact, like where are we from a 1 to 10? Like, is it going to be a 10 and teams are going to be on tilt because they're like, oh man, we got to actually deal with Will Wade? Or is it going to be, kind of, hey, we got to find our footing a little bit and maybe some of our promises aren't quite what we thought they would be? So again, it is fascinating. He's not afraid of anybody. He's not afraid to talk and, chirp as he needs to do. And, yeah, it goes back to the point where we need people like this in college basketball. We lost a lot of characters throughout the years. So Will Wade, got to get him back on Front Street. And it's a good thing for everybody.
Yeah, and Darion Williams, potential ACC Player of the Year. Terrence Arsenault, a year removed from that torn Achilles. You can clearly see the pathway to them being a potential contender, but also the depth has huge question marks. So maybe the most interesting kind of flip-flop team in the league. But I have some concerns about one team that people seem to be pretty confident in. Maybe you will like this angle a little bit better. My big question is, will Duke regret not doing more in the portal because they bring in more or less just two deep bench guys, Jack Scott from Princeton, Ogachukwu from Rice, who's basically just an extra third center for them. They're going to be relying a lot on internal development in the backcourt. And Caleb Foster last year was given a huge opportunity, got kind of shoved out of the rotation because he wasn't putting the ball in the hoop. Isaiah Evans takes his place. Eventually, he gets benched for lack of defense. Foster comes back. Darren Harris was more or less like a fake redshirt last year. And then
Hmm.
Caden Boozer, who a lot of people really like, but is not the kind of guaranteed superstar that his twin brother Cameron is. And I'm really wondering if Duke's going to regret not finding an equivalent of Sion James this year.
Yeah, it is fascinating, but I will say, I mean, Cedric Coward was supposed to be that guy, right?
Yeah.
So they did get a little bit screwed by the fact that NBA scouts were able to figure out that Cedric Coward is a prospect that is worth, going after. He ends up being the 15th pick in the draft, goes to the Memphis Grizzlies. Him and Jalen Wells, two Wazoo guys, are there together now, so that's fascinating. Yeah, Isaiah Evans to me is sort of the turner for this team. Like if he can develop that other side of the ball, as you mentioned, his defense, that will take this team to the right level. I do think that the Boozer twins are kind of the perfect replacement players. Again, you can't replace Cooper Flagg and Conka Nipple. Those are two guys that are obviously top 5 picks in the NBA draft, so they're very talented players. But I think the Boozer twins do kind of fit into those roles perfectly. Like I think Caden can kind of be the Conka Nipple of this team, and I think Cameron Boozer is a star. I mean, I watched him up close and personal at the McDonald's All-American game. Again, I'm a Carolina guy. I went to North Carolina, so there's a little bit of me that doesn't want these guys to be as good as they look. But Cameron Boozer, he passes the eye test. He obviously is going to have a lot of opportunities this year to kind of be the star of this team. So I do think that they're going to have a lot of talent. Dame Sarr coming over as well. That was sort of the Cedric Coward replacement, right? That was the guy they got in as sort of insurance for him. So that's a nice piece as well. They're projected to be the number 1 team in the ACC, which almost feels like a tradition at this point. It's, every single time that the media members get together at ACC Media Days, they all look around, they're saying, well, I guess it's Duke, right? They have the most talent. So again, John Shire, most talented roster in the ACC. I do worry a bit about the depth, like you said. I do worry like where the scoring comes from. Obviously, Isaiah Evans is the expectation there. There was some rumors that maybe he could get wooed to go, maybe follow, to Miami potentially and go down there with Jai Lucas. But again, he decides to stay at Duke. So this is going to be an opportunity for him to have a big season. But him, Caleb Foster, and Gungba coming back, I think is going to be really big for this team as well. He showed some flashes last year of being a really talented player. So again, Duke's the most talented team in the ACC. Like I said, this is a conversation we've had. It feels like year on year at this point, ever since they decided to make that turn and get into the pool of these top flight players. So since about 2011, it's like Duke's the most talented team. What does that lend itself to? Last year, it obviously led itself to a Final Four run that I still think they should have won the national championship. I'm still shocked they did not win that game against Houston. I was there in person and reeling from the fact that that actually happened. Coach K maybe to blame for that. He went to that game. He had gone to no other games. So maybe you can point the finger there. But yeah, very talented group. And if you don't know the name Cameron Boozer, you will know it very soon.
Yeah, and the one thing I do just keep in mind with Duke is mid-November last year, I don't think I was alone on this island of feeling like Tyrese Proctor was not going to be enough for this
Hmm.
team, and he took a huge step up over the next 3 months. So maybe one of those guys does the same. I mean, Isaiah Evans, we know he's going to at least shoot threes and make a lot of them. It's just a question of where else he
He's going to shoot,
can contribute.
not just threes. He's gonna take a lot of the shot economy out of this team, and I do feel like the one note that could be the difference from a November version of Duke versus a February, March version of Duke is like that shot economy might shift a little bit where, Cameron Boozer is going to be, end up being the number 1 option on this team. And maybe at the start of the season, it's Isaiah Evans. So Shire's shown that he's been willing to adapt. It will be different, obviously, with his staff now with Lucas gone. And maybe Lucas knows a little bit of his tricks up his sleeve. We saw that they missed him in the NCAA tournament, so that'll be fascinating. But again, I think this will be Cameron Boozer's team, and it will be a Cameron Boozer season. And it might even be both twins because I think Caden might be a little bit underrated at this point.
Yeah, he's a big swing piece as well. But Tate, your number 2 question for the ACC is?
Will Hubert Davis get it right this year? I think that is obviously a question that is happening, and we're in year 5 right now, and in Chapel Hill with Hubert Davis and this iteration of the team. The Roy Williams era, all those players that he had has waned, and now it's a totally different team. There's only one familiar face. If you go to practice right now, you could probably point out Seth Trimble. But the rest of this team is completely brand new. And obviously, they're banking on a lot of guys to come in and make an impact on this team. The one knock on North Carolina last year, you and I could, dissect this just from watching them play these games, the size, right? North Carolina did not have the size, especially on the wing, especially at the guard position, right? So defensively, they were a little bit handcuffed. This year, they are big. That is one thing that they are. Now, I'm not sure they're going to be better, but they will be bigger. And some of the pieces that they brought in, I really like the front court that they could throw out there. I like Jaron Stevenson, a guy from Pittsburgh, about 10 minutes away from the Dean Dome, that's going to be playing for this team, was at Alabama a couple years ago, and famously shut down R.J. Davis last year by guarding him, and he's 6'8". So, to have a guy who can throw on the perimeter and defend is very enticing. And as Carolina fans, obviously, to see a team that has this type of size, I think the real big question for this group, right, is where does the scoring come from? They bring in Luka, from Montenegro, and he is supposed to be the perimeter scoring that they're looking for. But is that enough? Seth Trimble, he's got a Ben and Jerry's that he owns on Franklin Street, but can he, make some shots for this team and get the scoring going? Last year in that Memphis scrimmage, I mean, he was incredible, and it was kind of this moment of aha where it's like, okay, well, Carolina has another guy outside of R.J. Davis that can score. A little bit up and down for Seth Trimble throughout the season, so obviously the expectation there will be a little bit higher. The bar will be a little bit higher. Caleb Wilson, who's coming into McDonald's All-American, 6'9" forward, reminds me a little bit of Marvin Williams from back in the day, and I think a guy that will be able to play at the 3 or the 4, same with Jaron Stevenson. And then you get Visar, right? I mean, they needed an actual footer, a 7-footer who can show some size, can be dynamic, and when they need a bucket, can they get some interior passing? Can they get some entry passes down and get easy buckets to a guy like Visar? We've seen him at Arizona show flashes. We'll see this year if he can sustain those flashes. And then from the guard position, I mean, Kion Evans, who they bring in from Colorado State. I've been saying this for a long time with the ACC, ever since the Mountain West propaganda started. I'm just like, why don't we go get those guys from the Mountain West, whether it be coaches or players or whatever it is? And he comes from Colorado State, so that's a nice piece. Dixon, who they brought in as well, will be a freshman from Gonzaga. There's been some some word coming out that he's looked great so far and a potential point guard option for this team. But again, it's so many new faces. It's so many different roles to fill. Can Hubert Davis get it together quickly? Because the guy that hired him, Bubba Cunningham, is phasing himself out, right? So we're going to have a new AD at North Carolina. There's going to be a lot of people questioning do we want 5 more years of Hubert Davis as we enter year 5? So far, it's been an every other year proposition, right? I mean, you go from a preseason number 1 team after an incredible run to the national championship game, and you're the first number 1 team to not make the NCAA tournament. The next year, you come back, you win the ACC regular season, you beat Duke twice, you get to the NCAA tournament, you lose a heartbreaker to Alabama. But again, North Carolina fans felt very secured in the fact that, hey, this is the team that, the blueprint is there, right? This looks like the Roy Williams blueprint of North Carolina. Last year, kind of takes a step back a little bit, not quite there, on the bubble again. So what does North Carolina look like under Hubert Davis? What is the standard? What is the expectation? And how easy is it for him to get a bunch of guys from the portal and get them to gel together? I think it's going to be a fascinating storyline. And again, at a school that is a blue blood, the conversations can turn quickly on you, even if you are, quote unquote, the right guy like Hubert Davis.
Yeah, he clearly really did a good job of diagnosing the issues from last year's team. They desperately needed a 30-minute-a-game offensive hub at center. They go get Visar. They needed a much steadier hand at point guard. They go get Evans. They needed just kind of a guy who can consistently make threes. They go get Jonathan Powell, who I'm not sure you even mentioned there.
Yeah, but from West Virginia, right?
What was awesome about that team was that they had this abundance of guys who could go get their own buckets. And a lot of nights they had too many of those guys, and now it's basically just Trimble. So they kind of flipped. All of last year's weaknesses are now strengths, but last year's one awesome strength, I don't want to call it a weakness yet. It depends on how good Seth Trimble is.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think Seth Trimble is going to feel that pressure again because, Carolina fans, they love continuity. There is still this, recalibration of what college basketball looks like for these North Carolina fans. So when they go to the first blue-white scrimmage and the only person they know on the roster is Seth Trimble, immediately all eyes are going to go to him, and the expectations fall a little bit on his shoulders. I do think that he will be a really, obviously defensively, he's going to be a great piece for them. He's going to be a great perimeter defender. That's what he's always been able to be for this team. But the scoring prowess is really the question mark. And I do feel like there's going to be some moments, especially early on in the season, where late in games, everybody's looking around and they're like, okay, who's supposed to get the ball here? Is it Luka? Is it Trimble? Is it we're just trying to get the ball into the post to a V-Star situation, right? So all that sort of stuff, I think they almost might be playing a little bit too careful early on in the year, trying to, massage the egos, figure out who is the guy. And I think at the end of the day, it's probably going to come down to Luka, a guy who's played professional basketball, which is funny to say in college basketball terms. But, we got G League players going to play college basketball now. So we got to get used to the new world that we live in. So, I think Bogovac is going to be the guy that ends up being the scoring perimeter threat that they really need. But again, is that something that you can really lean on to get you a 1 seed, a 2 seed, a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament? And if not, and you're back on the bubble again, the heat rises very quickly.
Yeah, Bogovac, a 22-year-old. It's like getting a grad transfer. He's just coming from Montenegro instead of like Pepperdine.
Yeah, oldest guy on the team, right? That's it's fascinating to kind of see where we are in college basketball. But all these, coaches and scouts and agents are all working overtime, right? All these agents now have players over in Europe. They're trying to funnel to colleges, and they knew North Carolina needed some pieces. V-Star had interest in North Carolina. He basically got funneled to North Carolina, so it's a whole new world, and we'll see if Hubert Davis can survive and thrive in that world.
All right, my second question here. Can the ACC hold their own in the ACC SEC Challenge this year? It seems very narrow, but of course, last year, the 14-2 shellacking. Duke and Clemson both win at home to keep it from turning into a shutout. And funny enough, we had the Ryder Cup last weekend, and it kind of felt the same, where the U.S. just goes down big halfway through Saturday, and mathematically they were still in it, but you kind of knew that it was over and that they just didn't have the ability to compete. That's how the whole ACC season felt last year. They get absolutely shellacked in that 2-day span, and we were all forced to accept that the ACC was just not on the same level as the other power conferences. So this year, I now put the pressure on some of these like second, third tier teams, and I'm looking at these matchups: Virginia Tech at South Carolina, Wake Forest home for Oklahoma, Miami at Ole Miss, Notre Dame home for Missouri, Virginia taking on Texas, and SMU at Vanderbilt. I look at those 6 games and basically say, if the ACC really wants to get 6, maybe 7 teams into the NCAA tournament, that collection of games, you got to go 4-2, 5-1, prove that you are maybe not on the same level as the best conference in college basketball, but that you can walk out against a lot of their quality teams and hold your own.
Yeah, and show that the middle and the bottom of the league is at least strong enough to compete. I think that was the real shocking part of last year, where it was just like, wow, the middle of this league looks absolutely shell-shocked, and shellacking is the right word. And I do think that there is a bit of conference propaganda and bias that kind of goes into all of these things. And early in the season, teams are still finding their footing a little bit, especially with all the turnover on a lot of these rosters. But again, the ACC needs 8 teams to at least be, competitive, right? So your Clemson, even though they're reloading, they need to be in the mix, and at least a team that can contend and compete and win some big games. Syracuse, right? This is a program that has so much tried and true tradition. They have a lot of talent coming in this year. Kiyan Anthony, Carmelo Anthony's son, obviously, is the one that a lot of people will talk about. But just the fact that they're bringing back Starling, Donnie Freeman, who showed some signs last year of life, and I do think, former 5-star kid, he's going to have a big year this year. So, can they take a leap? Can they get into the conversation as a team to watch out for? SMU, Boopie Miller, can he be a guy that makes some noise for this team? So really that mid group of ACC teams, Miami potentially with Coach Lucas, maybe they can make some noise. But that was really the issue. It's like the top 4 teams in the ACC probably can compete with the top 4 teams in the SEC, the top 4 teams in the Big Ten, right? That's top 4 teams in the Big 12. They're all on the same par. But once you get to that cutoff line from 5 to 12, it just felt like a total drop off. And the fact that they're getting, blown out in some of those games, it just puts a bad taste in your mouth. And then again, it puts pressure on those top teams because they can't lose to a Boston College, on a random Tuesday night, because if they do, now they're on the bubble. And I think if you're the ACC, you're trying to do your best to massage that situation, get the scheduling right, try to figure out how to get these guys in high profile games that can help, the brand of the league as best you can. And also, as a league, they have to be better about promoting each other. I do feel like some of the stuff, these top teams in the league, whether it be Carolina, Duke, Virginia, whoever it is, right? I mean, there has to be some propagating to say, hey, Brad Brownell, great coach, great program, right? Like some of that stuff. Look at the SEC. Like they're all working, even though they're all competing against each other, they're all working in conjunction for the good of the league, and they prop up the league 24/7. And I think the ACC needs to take a little bit out of that book and try to put that into their fold. But if they can get that, closer to like, not 14-2, right? I mean, just somewhere in the middle.
9-7.
Yeah, 9-7, right? Like somewhere closer to that. I feel like that makes the situation a lot better. So you're talking about competing against the Big 12, the Big 10, the ACC, and not the Mountain West, because the last few years it's like the Mountain West and the ACC are the ones, arguing back and forth, and that's just not a good place to be.
Yeah, I mean, last year it was that back-to-back North Carolina at home against Alabama, and then Pitt being down 25 to Mississippi State in the middle of the first
Hmm.
half that really knocked out two of the potential like second best team in the ACC contenders.
Yeah, and just like that, the narrative completely flips, and now that there's a team in Duke that's going to be the number one overall seed, and then it's just nothing, and I do feel like, to me, that is the issue. It's like we can't just have this 1% league. We need everybody involved, and we have better coaches. I think the product will improve this season, and I do feel like it's trending in the right direction. But again, you have to put it out on the court. You have to let people know that the production is there, and then just try to flip the narrative with the actual basketball, because right now it's tough sledding for everybody in the ACC as far as trying to, get the metrics and the analytics behind them and to get the conversation moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and this will be kind of the signature 2 days to see if they can. But Tate, your final intriguing question for this season in the ACC.
Is Virginia back? That's my big question. Ryan Odom, one of my favorite coaches in college basketball. Dave Odom, one of my favorite people in college basketball, runs the Maui Invitational. Shout out to Coach Odom. He's the best. But Ryan Odom is a guy that knows how to win. The Utah State experiment was a little bit out of his depth. I don't think he really enjoyed that. He's a good old Southern boy, so I'm happy to see him. Goes down to VCU, has a great year last year, and now he gets to Virginia. He's made things a little bit different. This will not be the Tony Bennett era Virginia team that we've known and loved. I mean, Kyle Guy not being on staff is a perfect example of that. This is going to be a new regime. And I think a player to know is Malik Thomas. I watched him last year at San Francisco. I think he's going to be in the mix for ACC Player of the Year if all things play into the to the right hands there. He averaged about 20 points per game last year, so that's a name to know. And Coach Odom in general, I mean, the offense will look completely different, and I think that will be like that'll be a little bit of a shock to the system for a lot of people that have been watching Virginia and kind of think of Virginia as the Tony Bennett era of Virginia. This is going to be a little bit more up tempo, a little bit more dramatic with how they run their offense, some high scoring affairs for sure. And I do think that Ryan Odom is a perfect coach for this program right now. And I do think that Virginia is going to get back into that top tier of the ACC and that top six of the ACC. And, it's one of those things where when you have a good basketball coach, you're able to kind of supply and refuel the talent there. It's going to be good for that program. And this is a national championship level program, right? Won it back in 2019. I know Tony Bennett said that was the last real national championship of college basketball, the college basketball that you and I grew up loving, which I do think he has a very sound point there. Everything changed in 2020, but Ryan Odom is not afraid of the new world. Ryan Odom is ready to kind of lead this program into that direction. And I think this year will be a really good year for the Cavaliers.
So you're going to make me have to use my backup question because my
Yeah,
third was also Virginia related, but
I love it.
I'm very fascinated to see how the relationship between Odom and his new point guard Dallin Hall, the BYU transfer, kind of gelled
Hmm.
together. Because you look at the Ryan Odom resume, it's the year two jump every year, and even in this new era of college basketball, year two he gets Stephen Ashworth to come back to Utah State. Year two he gets Max Shulga to come back to VCU. And it was those two guys knowing what he expects, knowing how to run his offense, that kind of fueled everything for a pair of NCAA tournament teams. This is the most talented roster Odom has had by maybe a full 5 kilometers. Like this is a clear NCAA tournament team on paper, but I'm wondering if they can kind of get through the bumps in the road earlier in the year, and then those two Euro guys, DeRitter and Grunlow, can they adapt over to the American game?
Yeah, and Onyenso, who was at Kentucky, went to Kansas State. I mean, this is a former five-star guy that they bring in. I mean, can he actually be a real piece? He does look the part. You know what I mean? I thought last year North Carolina should have gone after him a little bit harder. He goes to Kansas State, does not really work out. But at Virginia, with the coaching of Ryan Odom, I mean, like you said, on paper, this is a very talented team, but unfortunately, they don't play the game on paper. They play it on the hardwood. So we got to figure out what they actually look like when they roll the balls out. But I like that staff. I like the way that Odom has sort of talked about this group and the expectations that are there. And you got some veteran guys. And as every coach continues to say, when you have veteran guys, you do have a fighting chance. And I do think that this team, it's going to be better than last year. 15-17. It just kind of felt like just a fart noise personified as a basketball team, right? It just, it was not quite there. Yes, it was nice to have a really, a Tony Bennett disciple there running that team and Ron Sanchez, but this is going to be a totally different experience. And I think the excitement will be back around this Virginia team. Even if they don't get off to the best start, I think that they're good. By the time we get to January, February in ACC play, this will be a team that people are like, oh, man, Virginia. This is a team to watch out for. Like, they're going to make the tournament. So I'm excited to see what they look like this year. And it'll be fun for Virginia fans who deserve to watch a team that can actually contend and compete again.
Yeah, and Ryan Odom just fits the profile of that university. He looks and acts like a UVA guy. Obviously, ball
He's an
boy when
ACC
his
guy,
father
too.
was
You know
there.
what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, that's the thing. Like, I mean, this is ACC's got to get back to, like, let's get good coaches and good coaches that understand these programs. And I feel like he's a perfect example of that. It's like Ryan Odom should be in the ACC coaching at a premier program in the ACC. And Wake Forest fans are probably like, it's going to be twisted to watch him coach that team. We should have had him at Wake Forest. But, I think he's going to do a really good job. And you're right. I mean, it's one of those things where this sort of fits. I mean, like when you see the matchmaker there, you're like, oh, yeah, Ryan Odom at Virginia, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, he has like a Tony Bennett-esque demeanor as well, too. So,
Yeah.
all right. So for my last question, then I'm going to go to the other Virginia school. There's not a lot of people talking about Virginia Tech in this offseason. And I'm wondering if this Greek potential star, Neo Abdalis, is going to translate over to become, and everyone seems to think he could be a first round pick in the NBA draft next year. Is he that? Is he the next Yegor Demon, or is he just another super talented, really tall European playmaker who doesn't make it on the other side of the Atlantic? Because Mike Young is an awesome coach. They had the worst roster in the league last year and inexplicably finished ninth. I still don't understand how he did that. They got good transfer guards coming in. Toby Lawal and Ben Hammond were their only bright
Hmm.
spots last year. Those guys are back. And if Abdallas is good, this is not only a top half team, but this is a team with a real NCAA tournament case.
Yeah, Toby Lawal. I mean, I think that's another guy, first team All ACC potential player if things go and break the right way. Mike Young, as you mentioned, I mean, what he did at Wofford was incredible. What he's been able to do at Virginia Tech with some of those wins early in the season. I was at the Maui Invitational back in 2019 when they upset, Michigan State back then. I mean, they're always in the game because of Mike Young and the fact that he can really coach. And I do think that the talent is there this year to actually get them back into a conversation where, hey, we should be a top 7 team in the league. And Lawal should be a guy that's on NBA boards by the time we get to February. So, I mean, comes back senior forward, 6'8". He averaged 12.4 last year, 7 rebounds a game. Obviously, a name that you would have to know if you watched ACC basketball. You might not know if you're just a national guy. But I think they're gonna get more attention this year than they did last year, deservedly so. And I do think that this is a program, an athletic program that both in football and basketball, they have been hit pretty hard with all the changing stuff. And I do think there's a lot of money now coming into Blacksburg. And I hope for the sake of the brand of Virginia Tech that it's moving in the right direction. And I do think, with some of the names and some of the games they brought in, they have a real chance to make a run.
Yeah, and I hope honestly, like, I'm gonna be a little biased here. I hope they're good this year because Mike Young should be their coach.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
it feels like a mistake if they're mediocre and they end up firing him.
I'm with you. I'm with you. And, there's going to be, I mean, the hot seat is a real big question in the ACC because there's a lot of coaches
Oh
where,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like things could, whether it's Red Autry, if it doesn't go well at Syracuse, whether it's Hubert Davis, as I mentioned before, whether, I mean, Wake Forest. I know you have Calmese coming on a little bit later. I mean, but that's a very combustible situation as well where, yes, they've had talented teams. Yes, Steve Forbes is a good coach. We all know that. But again, what's the goal here? The goal is to make the tournament and to be competitive in the tournament. And right now, Wake Forest cannot get the first check there. They can't get in the tournament. So that's a very, interesting situation as well, where a lot of these teams, at Virginia Tech, right? If it doesn't go well this year and they think they have enough talent, maybe they start pointing the finger. So it's very combustible across the board. Shout out to Brad Brownell. He's off the board now. He's not on the hot seat, and I'm happy for him, the longest tenured coach in the ACC. That's good to see. But, it can change very quickly. And just think about what we were thinking last year going into the season. We did not think Larinaga would be out by December, right? I mean, a lot of this stuff moves so quickly. Tony Bennett shocking the world by announcing his retirement, a month before the season starts. I mean, that was shocking. Bruce Pearl just kind of took his playbook, a couple months or about a couple weeks ago at this point. So again, it is hard to project and predict what's going to happen, but I do think, there is going to be a lot of teams that if things don't go right this year, they're going to be trying to move on quickly because, again, you can flip these rosters and there's a lot of good coaches that are out there. But I'm with you. I love Mike Young at Virginia Tech. I think it's a great fit. And I do think that if he has the players, he can make a run. And I think this year they have more of a chance.
So before we close out here, I'm going to take all the top guys off the board, the Darion Williamses, the Cam Boozers, even the big names like the Seth Trimbles and the Henry Visars of the league. Just one guy in the ACC that you're just high on, that you're buying stock, you feel like is going to have a pretty good season and maybe isn't getting proper attention?
That's a great question. I mean, I don't like the team, but I do like him a lot. Donald Hand Jr. With Boston College, and I do feel like it's another one of those names where if you watch ACC basketball, you obviously know the name, and you obviously know he's a really good player, and it does feel like a lot of the times he's just trying to save this Boston College team from themselves. But they've been able to compete. Last year, 15.7 points per game. Obviously showed some signs of being a potential, NBA product at some point in his career. He's a junior this year. So I just think that's a name. And then another name I'll give you, Ndongo with Georgia Tech. This is just a talented player. And when he's healthy and he's out there, they're a really good group. And I think that, he's a junior this year. Last year, he had some moments where you're just like, wow, what a play. You know what I mean? Like there's some highlight show-stopping stuff from him. So those two guys, a little bit off the beaten path, but if you watch ACC basketball, obviously you know those names. But I think we don't talk about them enough, and they're probably going to be in the conversation for, ACC, first team, second team, third team at the end of the year.
I mean, Hand could be a star if he was on a better team, but
Right. I don't know if it's like purposeful that he's just like, look, man, I'm happy at Boston College. I can kind of do what I want here, so it is what it is. Or if he is being recruited and he's just, just like, I don't want to go there and risk the fact that, like, I'm not going to be the guy. I don't know what the impetus is, but again, he's a really good player, and I feel like he gives Boston College a fighting chance in a lot of these games.
So stepping back from Tate Frazier, basketball analyst, and just being Tate Frazier, knowledgeable UNC fan, how are you feeling about this season for the Tar Heels? Because like you mentioned earlier, this is a big one.
Yeah, a big one. And I think the fact that they are bigger is really important. And I do think that, bringing in, a GM who has helped with some of the roster construction has definitely taken some of the pressure off of this staff. So that's nice with Jim Tanner. So that's encouraging. I do feel like, though, they have sort of shown a blueprint where they're willing to spend the money, right? A lot of people, when they saw this roster and they saw the number, they're like, well, those numbers don't match up. But I don't think it was about that at all. I think it was about putting an alert out to the rest of the college basketball world, which is this. North Carolina will spend the money, right? I mean, look what they're doing with Bill Belichick. They're willing to spend the money to be in the game, and I think that was the larger message, and it doesn't mean that the current staff has to be there for that to be the case. They have an infrastructure built in, with the GM now, obviously a new AD, like I said. So I mean, as far as the health of the program and the fact that they're willing to show they're willing to compete with some of these players, as far as what they're offered and what they need to come play at a blue blood program, that's encouraging. So I'm happy to see that. I do feel like this is more of the, hey, if they're top four in the ACC and they get a chance to maybe, steal an ACC tournament, that would be a successful season. I don't see this as like the 2022 we get hot and make a run. I also don't see this as the 2024 Cormac team where they just get hot at the end of the year and they win the regular season and everyone thinks they can win the national championship. I'm not sure it's at that level, but it needs to be top four in the ACC. And if they're not top four in the ACC, I think there will be a lot of people that are clamoring for, a shift of some sort. So, I mean, for Hubert Davis's sake, I'm a big Hubert Davis believer. I'm a fan of him. I think he's a great person. I think he's the right guy for the job. I hope for his sake that this year goes the right way. No injuries happen, and they're able to use that size to their advantage and be a real contender in the ACC and potentially nationally. But if it doesn't go that way, it can go south very quickly.
So, last question here for you, because you are now the co-host of the Ringer Tailgate. You have moved
Oh
into
yeah.
the college football space. I have become a casual college football fan at this point, and God, the last two games for Pitt have just been. It would take me 15 minutes to run through an airing of grievances there, but am I
Especially that
right?
Louisville game, man.
Yeah,
That ball boy thing
God.
was that turned the whole game. Yeah.
Well, and just two horrible interceptions in the second half from Holstein too. But
Yeah.
am I right to hop on the Georgia Tech bandwagon here? Because I feel like Haynes King could take them to an ACC title and maybe even win a playoff game.
Yeah, I love Haynes King. I think the problem with Haynes King more than anything is, can he survive the season? This guy is just getting brutally mollywopped every game because he's got to run the ball to make plays. And I've seen some people talk about his arm strength and stuff like that. I think the reason why is because, I mean, the guy's running with his shoulder down and he's getting rocked every single time, which is, anybody that's a running quarterback, they're like, don't lead with your throwing shoulder. Haynes King is not afraid to lead with any part of his body as long as it means he gets the first down. So, I mean, he's a very talented player. I think Brent Key is a really good coach. He's like a borderline psychopath because he's so locked in on what this team needs to do to be great. I thought they showed a lot of resilience at Wake Forest. That was a classic trap game in the ACC. Jake Dicker needed a signature win first year, with that program. And for them to be able to fight back in that second half, to make it a game, to get to overtime, to get that stop on that 2-point conversion. I like the call from Dicker. I know a lot of people were, Monday morning quarterbacking saying, hey, why would you go for two there? You're going to have to go for two once we get into the next round of the overtime. It is what it is. They were up the entire game and they went for it. They thought they would throw them off a little bit, and it didn't work. But at the end of the day, I think Georgia Tech, if Haynes King can survive and stay healthy, then this team can be really, really good. And like you said, contend for an ACC championship. I think that last game of the season against Georgia will be a real litmus test of like how good is this team from a national standpoint, because the Clemson win, as much as that was great in the moment and you beat a top 10 team, obviously doesn't look as great now because Clemson has fallen off the face of the earth, and that's exactly what happened last year with Florida State. They beat number 10 Florida State in Ireland, and then obviously Florida State turns into be a complete dumpster fire for the rest of the season. So there's still some questions about how good is the ceiling of this Georgia Tech team, but I do know this. They will be prepared. They will be able to compete. And we just learned that even if they're down big, like they were against Wake Forest, they were down, I think, 17-0 at one point. They can fight back and scrawl back and claw back into a game and get a win. So I think that's the encouraging sign. But I'm worried about the health of Haynes King. This guy is just, I was looking at PFF, the amount of hits that he has taken is unbelievable. So kudos to him for being so strong and tough. But that wears on you at some point.
Yeah, I mean that's your perfect on the road trap game. Get punched in the mouth right off the jump. A
Yep.
truly mediocre team just loses that game. They
Yep.
do not fight their
Exactly.
way back in. That's why I'm starting to believe now. They're just so fun to watch with the triple option too. But yeah, Georgia Tech. I think that's my bandwagon team for this year.
I like the call. I mean, I like the Ramblin' Wreck. They got wrecked early in that game and they bounced back. Florida State too for me. I mean, I love Tommy Castellanos, and Virginia's been, I think, underrated, and it's so funny. It's like Florida State loses to Virginia. let's drop them down from number 7 in the polls to number 18. But now Virginia's ranked number 24, and now Alabama's number 10, who Florida State, mollywopped the first week. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm talking about with the ACC propaganda of it all. It's like someone's got to be fighting the good fight out there to question some of these things that happen, because all of a sudden you lose to a good Virginia team that's now ranked, but that's going to drop you 10 in the polls if you lost at Wake Forest. And Florida State, you mentioned that. I mean, like, a good team fights back in that game. They fought back. It was an incredible performance to get it to overtime. That 4th and goal conversion that they had to get it to overtime was incredible. Florida State, Georgia Tech, obviously Miami. I think if we know anything about the ACC, Florida State's definitely going to probably beat Miami and just hurt the whole overall. You know what I mean? It's sort of a perception of the league, but again, I think there's some good teams at the top. I think that the middle of the league is really a lot better than people give it credit for. And, NC State's a perfect example of that, right? This is a team that beat Virginia, and it was a non-conference game. And, no one's even talking about them anymore. Duke has looked a lot better. Obviously, Syracuse loses their quarterback. That changes the, sort of who they are as a group right now. But, again, there's some good teams in the ACC, and one of them is not Bill Belichick in North Carolina. So that has saved a lot of people some headaches there, because, they do not look like a good football team right now.
Yeah, I wasn't even going to bring that one up, but
it's okay. I'm content. I'm just so glad that I did not go back for that TCU game. I was supposed to be there. There were some things that moved around, so I did not have to go, and it was a great decision in hindsight. So that was nice.
Yeah, Michael Jordan couldn't even make it to the end of that one. But
my guy MJ, I mean, he had that game happen to him. Then he had the Ryder Cup. I'm like, this guy's never going to go to another sporting event. He's going to be out. I mean, every team that he has rooting interest in gets absolutely destroyed. So give my man MJ a break. Let's win some games. Maybe the Hornets can win some games. Even though he's not involved at a real high level, he's still got ownership, so maybe the Hornets will be better. But again, MJ, pour one out for our guy. He's having some tough times right now.
Yeah, but Tate Frazier, you mentioned the ACC bias. You are on the front lines in the national media fighting against that. It's probably
man.
you and Terrence Oglesby are probably like the lieutenants of that group. But where can all the good people find your work?
Yeah, man. Ringer Tailgate College Football Show. We're having fun. I'm hosting that. Van Lathan, Joel Anderson. We have Todd McShay, who's doing like the serious tape breakdown and letting you know where guys are in the draft and all that sort of stuff. That's not really our lane. Our lane is to have fun and talk about college football. We all love college football, so it's been a lot of fun. Go check that out. It's on YouTube. It's on Spotify, all the places. And then One Shining Podcast. We'll be back during the season and talking about college basketball, trying to defend the ACC as best we can. But we need the basketball to be good to defend it. You know what I mean? And shout out to all the great people we have on the show. A lot of great guests. And we're very excited for the season. And it should be a good one. So excited for college basketball to be back, man.
Yeah, everyone go listen to Tate, especially if North Carolina can beat Kansas that first week of the season. He'll have plenty to defend for the ACC.
Man.
But
That's
Tate,
going to be a tough one.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in there. But thank you for joining me.
Of course, man. Anytime. And good luck with Calmese. I know he's going to have a big year for Wake Forest.
Yeah, let's see what he has to say. All right, I am now joined by Wake Forest's new point guard, Nate Calmese. Nate, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So you have been on a fascinating journey. You grow up in Arizona, go not too far away from home to play for Lamar in Texas, go up to Washington where you play for both Washington and Washington State, and now across the country to North Carolina for Wake Forest. So you are a well-traveled man, but you've been with the Demon Deacons for a couple of months now, and I'm just curious, with all your experiences, what makes this place different than where you've been in the past years?
I would just say, obviously, it's at the highest level I've been at. Just the guys around me, the coaches, they, have great success with their guards, and, just the pressure they put on me every day to come out here and just be my best for the team and for myself. I just think that's what I needed and that's what I wanted. Take my game to the next level. I just feel like I need to take one more step, and I feel like this is the perfect place for that. So, yeah.
Well, recent history tells us that when guys come to Wake Forest under Steve Forbes, talented guards, he helps them to take that next step. So what is it that you have been working on? What do you feel like needs to be added to your game to help that come true?
I think we're just working on just a lot of just finding out ways to know when to score and know when to pass, just making the right decisions and reading the floor better, learning how to move off the ball when I don't have it in my hands, and then just becoming a way better defender. I think that's exactly what we talked about in our visit. And when I got here, that's exactly what it was. Just trying to take everything I did last year just to another level. So I think that's what we've been doing, trying to do.
So a lot of ways to potentially grow defensively for any player moving up a level. What are you guys kind of working on there? What are you really focusing on that end of the court?
Just staying engaged off the ball. I feel like me and my coaches know that I'm a really good defender on the ball when I'm locked in and, just engaged. I'm really good. And just like when I'm off the ball, just off the ball stuff, just being in a stance, knowing the reads, knowing when to tag, knowing to do certain things, just always being engaged off the ball. It just keeps me, active the whole game. So I think that's the biggest thing, just improving on just being engaged throughout the whole possession.
Yeah, it seems to me it's a lot of just like instinctual stuff that just listening to you talk about these both sides of the ball, just trying to really become more cognizant and work on what really your focus on the court within the
Mm.
game.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
The one thing that you didn't mention is putting the ball in the hoop. You did plenty of that both at Lamar and Washington State. One of the things that really stood out, the highlight packages going around of your last season, particularly your ability to attack off of the pick and roll. So, is it an adjustment getting in with these new teammates, trying to read the floor differently? Have you found a pick and roll partner that you feel like you're going to be real comfortable with?
I mean, Trey and Coop, those are my guys to, set big bodies in a row. We've been working hard. We always be on different teams. So just working on both of them. I think it's going to be great all year. Obviously with our defense, it's hard to score in practice because of the things that we do. But besides that, it's been great. I just can't wait to play somebody else when we get to, show the world what we can do in the two-man game with me and Trey or me and Coop. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Cooper Schweiger was a guy who did a lot at Valparaiso. So another guy who put up big numbers, trying to adjust to a different level with you as well. But Washington State was really a big breakthrough season for you last year. What was your biggest takeaway from being there? What do you feel like you helped you to grow the most in that stop?
I would just say just a simple answer for me, just finding myself again. It's just hard going from 17 points a game freshman of the year to transferring to playing 11 minutes a game, not seeing the court some nights seeing the court, some nights not getting enough shots. It's hard. It was hard on me. I took a lot of things personal. But I just think me and my coaches at Washington helped me find a way to still get better at times. And then once, a new opportunity came at Washington State, I just had to seize the moment and just go out there and do what I know I could do with confidence. I think that was the biggest thing for me, just getting my confidence back. So,
Were you able to learn things? You mentioned getting your confidence back. It was a rough season for you statistically at Washington as a sophomore. Were
mhm.
you able to at least take lessons out of that? Do you feel like that helped you to grow at all?
Yeah, like I said, I think obviously because I wasn't playing a lot, I was really down on myself. Sometimes I didn't want to work out. Sometimes I just wanted to just get back to the house. But I think me and Coach Quincy Pondexter, we found ways to, even though when I didn't want to get better, I didn't feel like doing things, still fight through that and get in the gym and get my shots up, get my weights in. I feel like that helped me build a lot of mental toughness and resiliency, yeah, just for the future.
So, what was it after all that you've gone through? What was it that drew you to Wake Forest the most? Was it Coach Forbes specifically? Was it something having to do with just the history of the program, the other players who had committed to the roster already? What was it?
It was a couple things. I think for me, obviously, like you said, I've been on a journey. I've been in the portal 3 times, so I know what it's like in the portal. I think the biggest thing for me is just what stood out to me from the beginning is Coach Forbes is the one that called me every day. That doesn't happen a lot with a lot of different coaches, the assistant, it's the recruiting director, things like that. But every day it was Coach Forbes checking in on me, texting me, and I took that really personal. Then we had a Zoom. My parents loved him, felt the energy, felt that it was genuine. So that was really big. And I think the last part for me is just Chris Paul's family. So just talking to him, him talking about how we trust in Forbes and what Forbes do with his guards. I mean, I think that was the cherry on top for me to come here. So I think those are the three main reasons why.
I mean, who can say no to Chris Paul,
Yeah, it's
especially as a
hard.
young point guard?
It's hard. It's hard.
Where would he rank among just kind of your childhood NBA idols?
Uh, sh- Top three. I mean, it's hard to say. idols because I haven't met a lot of these people that I call my idols, but I've been able to talk to Chris, be on the phone with Chris, interact with Chris. So it's been great to see him in a personal level. So I think he's probably my top three for sure.
Who else did you really enjoy watching growing up? And then even taking it to now, are there any guys who you feel like you can learn from their games?
I would say the simple answer for me growing up was Kobe. I feel like that's everybody's guy, just so inspirational. So, I had a fat head of him on my wall, so that was my guy. And I think now who I try to model my game after, take some things from his game is Shea. I've been watching Shea since he was on the Clippers. A lot of people obviously now are jumping on Shea, but I think I've been trying to, follow him for a couple years. Me and my trainer back home, Gabe, we've been locking in on his film, trying to change pace, things like that. So I feel like him, Shea, Kobe, and Chris are probably my top three for sure.
I mean, Kobe was kind of just everybody's answer 10 years ago. I feel like you're young enough that, I mean, I'm not much older than you. I really only remember the second half of the Kobe career. So I think
Mhm.
you're probably at an age where it's no longer just a given that he's the guy.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think as you say that, I think a lot of people now are switching over to the Brown and things like that. But I think just like the Black Mamba mentality, just the inspiration he's had on so many people, what he's done for the Lakers. It's hard not to say Kobe. And obviously, for me being from the West Coast, it's right next to me. So, I thought that was my big inspiration growing up.
So, as someone from Arizona, then, were you a Laker fan or just a Kobe fan?
I've never really been a big fan of the Suns or a team. I've always been a player guy. So I feel like Kobe was the guy. So I would say, yeah, I guess I was a Lakers fan, but not really. I was really just a fan of a player. So yeah,
Just watching Kobe and CP.
yeah, yeah.
Well, you had CP on the Suns at the end, so at
That
least
was
you,
that
you
was
got a
yeah, it
little
was
bit of
fun.
enjoyment there.
That was fun. That was fun.
So just taking it back though, you said Coach Forbes called you every single day, and he is well known as just like an in the trenches guy. His resume, he's a coaching lifer. Really, I mean, he was in community colleges for decades and decades, an assistant all over the place. Only got a shot about a decade ago, and now is trying to get Wake Forest to the NCAA tournament for the very first time. But what have the last few months been like with him? What are your biggest takeaways getting to spend every day with that guy?
Shoot, off the court, he's a great guy, easy to talk to. Man, that's my guy. Like I love talking to Coach Forbes, checking in his office every day. But once them lights turn on, what's from between them lines, it's no jokes, no playing around. We gonna get to work, and we gonna work hard. And if we don't get that of him, then it's gonna be a problem. So, it's been great. You see a lot of these coaches, you see him in practice, you don't see him off the court. I see Coach Forbes off the court interacting with us, checking in with him. And I think that's the greatest thing with me, just being able to interact with my head coach. Then on the court, he's gonna push me, he's gonna get on me. But at the end of the day, once practice is over, it's all love. So, I mean, these past 3 months has just been great.
How have you guys been staying loose? I mean, it's tough. You practice for months and months and months and months. I mean, we're still over a month away from the first game. How do you guys stay loose? How do you kind of keep working on the chemistry off the court here so that you're not starting to fall asleep on the job waiting for that November 3rd, that big first day?
I mean, I think like you said, it's hard. It's hard to, once practice is over, people want to go home, chill, relax. But I think the biggest thing for us is just we know that's a big part of what it takes to get to the NCAA tournament. But I think like for us, all of our classes are in person, so a lot of us have the same classes together. So we interact like that on projects. We have to go to the football games together, go out to eat. A lot of us stay in the same apartment complex, so it's easy like that just to interact on a day-to-day basis off the court with our guys, but at the same time, you need your own free time at that. But I think we found a great balance on this team to, find some continuity off the court, but still at the same time, good times to ourselves. So it's been great.
Who's taking the lead off the court? There's got to be somebody who's coming up with some fun activities for you guys to do together.
I would just say, Vinny and Will, they've been here for 3 years, so they know what to do and what not to do. So, every time we're like, what we doing this weekend, those are the guys to go to. So I think those guys have really took the lead of us continuing off the court.
So you're talking about because I think those are names that people are not going to be particularly familiar with, but Will Underwood, I assume,
Yep.
and then Vincent Rischuti. I don't know how to say his name.
Yeah, that's him. Those are my guys. Those are the guys for sure. They take, they're great leaders off the court and they're great leaders on the court. So even though they're walk-ons, we don't do that over here. We don't do the walk-on scholarship. Everybody's the same. They all play the same. They all have the same voice on our team. So it's been great to have them for sure.
So, last question for you, because I find that this is a very fascinating one to ask players, and you get some very, very different answers. When you guys are in the locker room, who's in control of the music, and do they deserve to have that control?
We really haven't had that established in our team. When we're in the locker room, we like to crack a lot of jokes, like to talk about our days, what happened in practice. There's really too much music going on. We kind of have our own music with just our chatter, just making jokes, cracking jokes. So we haven't had that yet. I feel like that will come when preseason comes. I mean, when pre-games come around, pre-game music. But as of right now, we haven't really listened to any music in the locker room, if I'm being completely honest with you.
Yeah, and well, that's a good thing in this portal era. I mean, you should know it better than anybody how tough it is to establish chemistry when you're bouncing around. So good to hear that the guys in the Wake Forest locker room are starting to do just that, it sounds like.
100%. You know that. We love to talk to each other, love to interact. I feel like that's the biggest piece is we all like each other. And I feel like that's my first time I could say that at every school I've been at. It's my first team where I feel like everybody likes each other. I like everybody. Ain't no problems. Ain't no guys that want to do everything for themselves. So I think it's been a great experience in these past 3 months for sure.
So, final question here for you, Nate. Wake Forest will have a great season if you are able to contribute by blank.
What if I'm able to contribute myself?
Yeah, what do you feel like you need to contribute to this team for Wake to be able to have a really nice season?
If I impact the ball on defense every night, come out, get my teammates involved, but still, get myself involved, and just be a great leader out there and keep my teammates encouraged. I think we'll have a great year and get to that NCAA tournament, which is everybody's goal on this team and fans as well. So I think it's going to be a great year.
All right, Nate Calmese, we will see you running pick and rolls with Cooper Schweiger not that long from now. Wake Forest season coming up in about a month. Thank you for joining me.
Appreciate you having me.